You know, when I'm having a bad day, it sometimes helps to find a story about dumbass Trump voters who are now finding out just how stupid it was to have voted for that criminal. And I came across a story from NPR just now. Here's the headline. A Maryland town wanted Trump to cut waste. Now it's a target. And when I saw this headline, I thought, oh, this has got to be a town in Western Maryland. And it is. It is a town called Emmitsburg, which looks to be, I looked at the map, it is a stone's throw from Pennsylvania. And if you aren't familiar with Pennsylvania, I lived there for a while. If you get outside of the cities, which is most of the land area of Pennsylvania is outside of the cities. It's a very rural state, big state. You might as well be in Alabama. I mean, it is hardcore MAGA. Anyway, so it's no surprise that this town is close to Pennsylvania. Let me read some of this article for you. Frank Davis saw a lot of waste during his decades in the federal government. In November, he voted for Donald Trump to get rid of it. So far, Davis likes a lot of what he has seen. Quote, I'm probably going to get shot for this, but he is doing what he said he was going to do, says Davis, who serves as mayor of his town of about 3,000 people in Western Maryland, just south of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. So, Mr. Davis here, Frank, is mayor of Emmitsburg. In March, the Trump administration suddenly canceled in-person classes at the National Fire Academy here, which trains the United States firefighters. Not only is the academy a big part of Emmitsburg's identity, but it also helps drive the local economy. Uh-oh, that doesn't sound good, especially if you're mayor. Quote, it will change my outlook to say that they're not being fair, says Davis. Actually, did I skip something here? I did. Let me go back. Davis says the administration is reviewing the academy's operations, and he is hopeful it will restore classes. If not, he says, he'll see the administration somewhat differently. Quote, it will change my outlook to say that they're not being fair, says Davis, who also serves as emergency medical services captain at the local firehouse known as the Vigilant Hose Company. Quote, they're just going in to cut and not caring what they cut. Well, you know, Frank, where he says here, it will change my outlook to say they're not being fair. How is it that they're not being fair? Oh, yeah, I know. Because now they're cutting something that you benefit from. That's why it's not fair. If Trump was cutting things that only affected and hurt other people, you'd be all for it, right, Frank? Mayor Frank? You'd be all for that as long as it's not you who is getting screwed. Typical selfish MAGA. Emmitsburg voted overwhelmingly for President Trump in November. NPR interviewed about 24 people here. Almost all of them voted for Trump, and many said his plans to cut federal spending were a key attraction. Now they say they are puzzled as to why the administration would cancel national training for firefighters. Why would they do that? We voted for him to cut, but why is he cutting this? You voted for him to cut things, right? You were all for it. Was he ever specific about what he was going to cut? No, he wasn't. So why is it that you supported? You just supported in general that he would cut things? And let's be specific here. We're talking about spending. That's what you're talking about. You didn't consider the nitty-gritty, like the specific aspects of cutting government and what that actually means, that actually affects programs that affect people and local economies. You just wanted to cut spending, right? Which Makes me wonder, then why the hell did you vote for Donald Trump? If you wanted someone to cut spending, why would you vote for the guy who was the biggest debt spending president in all of American history? I mean, he has a track record, and his track record is that of a profligate, wasteful spender. He added about $2 trillion to the debt every single year. He added about $8 trillion to the debt in one term. To put it in perspective, Barack Obama, who served 8 years as opposed to Trump's 4 at that time, added about the same amount of money, about $8 trillion in 8 years. Trump added $8 trillion in 4 years. And I bet, what's his name, Mayor Frank Davis, I bet you if you ask Frank Davis about Obama's spending, he would tell you how reckless it was. Because all these MAGA types, all these Republicans, there was no MAGA at the time, but during the Obama years, these Republicans who are now MAGA, I would hear them all the time talk about how Barack Obama's reckless spending was going to destroy the country, bankrupt the country. They didn't seem to have any problem when Donald Trump's spending added twice as much every year to the debt as did Barack Obama's. And if they're worried about, Barack Obama's spending bankrupting the country, why is it that you would replace him and vote for a guy who personally had, 6 bankruptcies? A guy who friggin' bankrupted a casino? You thought that guy, the guy who literally said, "I love debt," that guy, you thought he would be good on spending and debt? Are you freaking out of your mind, Frank? Anyway, Emmitsburg, no, I already read that. Ott House, an Emmitsburg pub, is a home away from home for firefighters training at the nearby National Fire Academy. Visiting firefighters have come here for decades, and thousands of patches from their departments now line the pub's walls. Dennis O'Neill, don't know if I'm pronouncing that right and don't much care, is also puzzled. He served for 2 decades as superintendent of the academy, which he says trained 8,000 to 10,000 firefighters on campus each year. Boy, that's a lot of firefighters coming to Emmitsburg, Maryland for their training. That's a lot of business to your local economy. The academy, often referred to as the National War College for Firefighting, offers courses in everything from leadership and management for fire chiefs to how to conduct fire, arson, and explosion investigations. Pretty important stuff, I will admit. Quote, the National Fire Academy takes men and women out of their comfort zone and exposes them to real serious tragedies and forces them to work through what kind of decisions they're going to make, said O'Neill, who lives over the border in Pennsylvania. If the courses aren't restored, he says, Americans will pay. Quote, we're on a very long, slow path to self-destruction. Every day that this training is unavailable to the locals is one day closer to a disaster they can't handle or won't know how to handle. The Federal Emergency Management Agency oversees the academy, which pays for firefighters to come to Emmitsburg. When NPR asked why the classes were canceled, FEMA did not answer directly, but suggested in a statement that it had to do with travel costs. Quote, the bottom line is we are no longer paying for non-employee travel. The statement reads, we are only authorizing travel for mission-critical programs. This isn't one. Some of the classes are still available online, though. Yeah, I'm sure that'll be a good substitute for all that in-person training for these firefighters. You know, firefighters do a very important job, and this place trains and educates firefighters from all across the country. And you know, a lot of areas do not have the money to send firefighters for this kind of training. That's why this government program, which paid the travel expenses through FEMA, paid the travel expenses for firefighters from all over the country to come to Emmitsburg, Maryland, for this critical training. You know, and the smaller the area is, the more rural the area is, the less likely they have the money to pay for their firefighters to get this kind of training. And you know what? Those areas are predominantly, wait for it, MAGA areas. These are red counties, red areas. You know, the cities, which are blue, have much more money, and they can provide this kind of training to their firefighters. It's MAGA firefighters and communities served, you know, MAGA communities served by these firefighters who don't have the money to pay them to get this training. So you MAGAs, you voted to make your communities less safe. So if, God forbid, you have a house fire, you might not have the kind of trained firefighting personnel in your community to respond to the house that you live in that's now on fire. But you don't think about that. You just think about somebody else getting screwed, right? You didn't care about that. And some of these people are just now upset because they're getting screwed. And a lot of these MAGAs, they don't understand. This is just one small example. This program paid for through FEMA to pay the travel expenses for these firefighters to get this training. This is just one tiny example of the things that are getting cut that most MAGAs have no idea about. Do you think any of these MAGAs know anything about this, or how they might be affected if they live, you know, in some rural county in North Dakota? Do they have any idea that they might be directly affected by this, you know, the cut to this program? No, of course not. Let's see what else we have here. We're on a very long path to self-destruction. John Beck, who serves as fire chief of the Waynesboro Volunteer Fire Department nearby in Pennsylvania, had applied for a weekend leadership and development course at the academy in July. It would be his first one, but he doesn't expect it'll happen now. He also says online courses don't cut it. You don't say. You mean just sitting at your computer, going through some little online training is not the same as being there in person and doing this training in person? Come on, that doesn't make any sense. I'm sure the computer thing is just as good. Who did you vote for, Beck? Does it say? I don't know. Quote, we're only 100 plus days in, Beck says of Trump's current term. I wish things were going differently. Oh, yes, he did vote for Trump. Beck doesn't regret his vote yet. Quote, I'm not 100% there yet, but it may not take much more, he says. And by the way, I talked to you guys a lot about this. Not everyone who voted for Donald Trump is part of his cult, this mindless cult that will never turn on him no matter what. I know a lot of people think that that's the case, but it just isn't. There's a lot of people who are soft Trump voters who voted for him for whatever reason, but are not part of his cult. And really, it's only the cult, those people who are completely beyond reach. Facts don't matter. If they get screwed personally, it doesn't matter. They're in a cult. Their brains are fried. You cannot, reach these people with logic or facts. That's the cult. That's not everybody who voted for him. A lot of people who voted for him, and we don't really have numbers on this, but a lot of people who voted for him are not part of his cult. They're not, Trumpers no matter what. They can abandon him. And look, Beck was willing to say this to someone from NPR. The enemy, NPR, they're being, their funding is being cut because they're the enemy of the people, right? And so Beck, who voted for Trump, the fact that he even spoke to a reporter from NPR is a good indication that he's not part of the cult, and that he's willing to admit to NPR that it might not take much more for him to regret his vote. Okay, that guy voted for Trump. Clearly, he is not part of the cult. Back in Emmitsburg, the diner crowd is arriving at Ott House, a family-run pub and home away from home for firefighters who train at the academy. Over the decades, firefighters have left thousands of patches from their departments, which now blanket the walls of the pub. They include patches for a government fire bureau in Taiwan and departments in Bath, Maine and Juneau, Alaska. Firefighters make up more than 30% of the pub's business. That's a big hit you're going to take. Co-owner Susan Glass is worried about the long-term impact. Quote, "I've already told a lot of our employees that it's a possibility they won't have a job for the summer, but we're hoping things open back up." In fact, many of the town's residents hold out hope that the administration will see the value of the academy and start classes again. Glass, who also voted for Trump, but feels the administration is Glass also voted for Trump, but feels the administration is moving too fast. Quote, "I agree with a lot of the things they're doing, but sometimes I disagree on how they're doing them," Glass says. I would love it if these reporters, or when they talk to these Trump voters and they say, "Oh, I agree with a lot of the things that he's doing," ask them to specifically name those things that he's doing that they disagree with. I bet these people can't name a single actual thing. They'll just say, "Oh, Doge is great," or "the cuts are good generally, but I don't like that I'm getting screwed." Well, what is it specifically that you like? And by the way, I wonder if all these people quoted in this story who like the things that he's doing, except when he's doing them to me, and they like these cuts, what do they think of Trump's claims of massive fraud? Yeah, he tells us there's so much waste, fraud, and abuse. Where are the prosecutions for fraud? I never hear these Trumpers asked that question. I never hear reporters ask Trump that question, which our media is so pathetic and worthless when they interview Trump. They just let him say whatever the hell he wants. They never ask any hard questions at all. He says all the time, "Oh, there's so much waste and fraud." Where are the prosecutions for fraud? Fraud is a crime. Okay, I thought you were the law and order president, convicted felon that you are. Where are the prosecutions? Not a single one. And you know, if they had found any crimes and prosecuted anyone in the deep state for fraud, that Pam Bondi would be on Fox 24 hours a day talking about it. But there isn't one example, not one example of fraud. Nobody arrested for fraud. The whole thing is a fraud. I agree with a lot of what the things they're doing, blah, blah, blah. Maybe, she says, "I don't like the way the administration shouldn't try to do so much at once." Quote, "Maybe spread it out a little bit. It just seems like it's just one hammer after another." Aw, the hammer's falling on your head and you don't like it so much. So at the beginning of this video, I referenced having a bad day, so I just want to update you on that, since some of you wanted to know how it turned out. This had to do with a video that I had posted earlier in which I was ranting about how my day was not off to the best start, and it actually followed a few days prior leading up to today that were also pretty annoying. But everything's been sorted. We got the car fixed, on the road, got to where we needed to go. And I do want to say this. You know, we all have things in our lives that are annoying and put us in bad moods. But it's important to put those things into perspective, as I do. I mean, I am very fortunate. I have a lot going very well in my life, and I'm very lucky. And so these things are not important. A lot of these things, your car breaks down, whatever, annoying things like that, it happens, right? And in the moment, some of us who have, tempers, I wish I was much more easygoing as some people are. I'm not really one of those people. In the moment, I can get pretty pissed off, but it's fleeting. You got to put these things into perspective. car breaking down, things not going your way. These aren't important things. We need to keep in mind the important things. I know for me, there's a lot of people out there who have real problems, okay? These things that I'm dealing with right now are not real problems. They're annoyances. They're not real problems. And so I don't want to make it sound in any way like I think my problems are so significant. No, they're not. They're not problems. They're annoyances. And so we need to keep that in perspective. Those of us who are fortunate, and keep in our thoughts those of us who may be going through much more difficult situations. Anyways, I just want to say that. And if you are one of those people who really are dealing with real problems, not like my stupid annoyances from this morning, I hope things get better for you. I really do. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for watching.